Okay, so the page I want you to try to build out is a settings page. Now this is, of course, not the most beautiful page, but we're just trying to get a feel for what the widgets are. So see, we have an image at the top. We have a place to enter text in. We have a switch like this and a button, all centered and vertical. Now for the picture, you could use this link over here. This gives you a random picture, a size 200 and 200, and trying to figure out how to make that picture show up in your Flutter application. So I encourage you to pause the video here, try to build this yourself, just to get a feel for how to search for widgets and how to figure out what you need, and then we'll go through it together. So we're going to start from a clean slate. The very first thing that we did a couple times already is trying to figure out this top part over here. This is an app bar within a scaffold. So I know the scaffold has an app bar property, and we can give it an app bar. Now, the text I had was called settings. If we hover over app bar, we see it has something called a title. Let's test that out. And we'll see that title, if we hover over it, needs to be a type of widget. So text is a type of widget, and we can change this to be settings. So we save it. There we go. That's the first part. Now, the next thing I notice here is as we're looking at the application, there's multiple things all in a row vertically. So to do this before, we've done it using a column widget. And let me just test that using a widget that I know already, called a text widget. Let me copy paste that twice and see what that looks like. So there we go. Two widgets, both on top of each other. But one problem is those widgets are not in the middle. I need to make sure they are horizontally centered. So when I look at the column, I see the main axis alignment. I encourage you, while you're working with Flutter, just keep trying stuff. It comes with hot reload. It's really easy to test, see whether something is right or whether it's wrong, and it'll give you a good feel for how it works. We do main axis alignment dot center. We save it. That's not really what we wanted. We didn't want it in the middle of the screen. We want it to be centered horizontally. Now there's also cross-axis alignment, but you see here, it defaults to center. So that can't be the reason. Now whether you go this hard with debugging, that's up to you, but I just wanted to show you something that if we give a color to the background, colors.red, we'll see the cross-axis alignment is technically centered. The problem is that our column is only this wide. So in order to have it centered horizontally within this red box, your only option is to put it here. So our other option is using something we called before. It's called center. We save it here. That puts it in the center, and we can actually remove this main axis alignment because we want it to just be at the top. Now let's do one step at a time. So this next thing is an image. Now you can check the documentation. You could search for anything related to images, or sometimes I just even like to guess. So if we do image, if we scroll down, you'll see there's image.asset, image.memory, and image.network. So since we are using a URL, we want to use image.network here. And you'll see a bunch of red squiggly lines here because if you hover over it, it says evaluation of the constant expression throws an exception. So an image from the network cannot be constant. That's because image from the network isn't just something static. It is an image that comes from the network and you have to insert it here. So we'll remove that constant, and then within the network, we'll add our URL that I showed you earlier. There we go. Let's try to save it. And it's starting to look something like that. Now the next thing is this field over here. So we can actually go to the widget index and type in text, and we could just scroll through. You see something called a text field here that actually looks like what we're using. So let's try to add that into our application. Text field, we save it. Now we see is just a little underline like this. That's not what we saw in the application that we have to build. So let's hover over text field and see what type of properties it has. So it has a decoration property. That sounds like it could be right because this needs to be decorated to look more like this. So our decoration takes an input decoration, And then our input decoration takes in a couple other fields. We're going to find the fields of border and give it an outlined input border and a label text of username. So now, if we save this, it says we have a problem. Have an extra little bracket here. There we go. Now we're typing it in. It looks kind of what we were looking at before. There's one problem. Those are really tight together. There is a little bit of spacing here. Remember in the last lesson, I mentioned that's what you can use size box for. Now we'll give it a height of 20, and that's looking a little bit better. But still, not perfect. You see, this username has a little bit of space around here, while this is all the way up until the edge. It looks like we need to add a little bit of padding between the edge of this wall and the username. So we can wrap the text field in a widget, and you can do that by clicking Command period and select this Wrap with Widget option. And actually, there is a Wrap with Padding option available to us right away. So I'll just click that, save it, and now we're looking even better, and it's pretty similar to what we had. Now, 2 more widgets to go. We see this Notifications widget and this Switch. So we can go to the widget index, look for something that's Switch related. And there we go. That looks like something that we would need. We'll go back to our application, and we can actually remove this hello now and just start typing Switch. So for Switch, you're going to need 2 things, a value and an onChange method. So onChange is called whenever the toggle is toggled. And it will be a function that will give you a new value. And then we actually have to give the value of our switch. So that needs to be a variable defined at the top. It needs to be a Boolean. We'll just call it value, and we need to make sure we put it within the state, not up there. And then whenever it changes, we need to set our old value to the new value. And there we go. It's working perfectly. Again, if we look back at our design, we had this notifications thing, and it looks like it's in a type of row with the switch button. So let's try to wrap this within a row, which is, again, one of the options in the command period. Here we'll do text, and we'll do notifications. That's good, but it's not centered. So for a row, it has a different axis than the column. So for this one, we want to actually do the main axis alignment, and main axis alignment dot center. The very last widget is a button. You go search for buttons in the widget index, but we're just going to do an elevated button with a child that says save and on pressed, and that doesn't do anything because we're just trying to have something that looks nice. So there we go. We built out the starting template. Now you don't need to worry because in the rest of this course, we're going to talk about the different layouts. We're going to cover a lot of different widgets. We're going to get more practice with these specific widgets. And by the end of it, hopefully you'll be a master on widgets and different layouts.